Remember this, I've been indicted more than Alphonse Capone, Mr. President. Do you know who that is? Even the president just said, I do. Scarface, Al Capone. If he had dinner with you and he didn't like the smile in your face, he thought you were mocking him by smiling, you would be dead before you got home and said hello to your wife. And Alphonse Capone, I got indicted 4 times by this gang of thugs.
The name Alcatraz is derived from the Spanish Alcatrazes. In 1775, the Spanish explorer Juan Manuel de Ayala was the first to sail into what is now known as San Francisco Bay. His expedition mapped the bay and named one of the 3 islands Alcatrazes. Over time, the name was anglicized to Alcatraz. While the exact meaning is still debated, Alcatraz is usually defined as meaning pelican or strange bird. In 1850, a presidential order set aside the island for possible use as a United States military reservation. The California Gold Rush, the resulting boom in the growth of San Francisco, and the need to protect San Francisco Bay, led the U.S. Army to build a citadel, or fortress, at the top of the island in the early 1850s. The Army also made plans to install more than 100 cannons on the island, making Alcatraz the most heavily fortified military site on the West Coast. Together with Fort Point and Lime Point, Alcatraz formed a triangle of defense designed to protect the entrance to the bay. The island was also the site of the first operational lighthouse on the west coast of the United States. By the late 1850s, the first military prisoners were being housed on the island. While the defensive necessity of Alcatraz diminished over time, the island never fired its guns in battle. Its role as a prison would continue for more than 100 years. In 1909, the Army tore down the citadel, leaving its basement level to serve as the foundation for a new military prison. From 1909 through 1911, the military prisoners on Alcatraz built the new prison, which was designated the Pacific Branch, U.S. Disciplinary Barracks for the U.S. Army. It was this prison building that later became famous as the Rock. The U.S. Army used the island for more than 80 years, from 1850 until 1933 when the island was transferred to the U.S. Department of Justice for use by the Federal Bureau of Prisons. The federal government had decided to open a maximum security, minimum privilege penitentiary to deal with the most incorrigible inmates in federal prisons, and to show the law-abiding public that the federal government was serious about stopping the rampant crime of the 1920s and 30s. The correctional officers at Alcatraz were a unique breed, tasked with maintaining order in one of the toughest prisons in America. They underwent rigorous training and had to adhere to strict protocols to ensure the security of the facility. While several well-known criminals such as Al Capone, George Machine Gun Kelly, Alvin Karpis, the first Public Enemy #1, and Arthur Doc Parker did time on Alcatraz, most of the prisoners incarcerated there were not well-known gangsters. Instead, they were inmates who refused to conform to the rules and regulations at other federal institutions, were considered violent and dangerous, or were deemed escape risks. The cells were small, measuring about 5 feet by 9 feet, and contained only the bare essentials: a bed, a desk, and a toilet. Meals were served in the dining hall, where inmates could socialize under strict supervision. Inmates were allowed out of their cells for work, recreation, and meals, and they had access to a library where they could read books and magazines. However, security was always tight, with guards keeping a close watch on all activities. Alcatraz was not just a prison but a fortress designed to hold the most dangerous criminals. If a man did not behave at another institution, he could be sent to Alcatraz, where the highly structured, monotonous daily routine was designed to teach an inmate to follow rules and regulations. At Alcatraz, a prisoner had 4 rights: food, clothing, shelter, and medical care. Everything else was a privilege that had to be earned. Some privileges a prisoner could earn included working, corresponding with and having visits from family members, access to the prison library, and recreational activities such as painting and music. Once prison officials felt a man no longer posed a threat and could follow the rules, usually after an average of 5 years on Alcatraz, He could then be transferred back to another federal prison to finish his sentence and be released. The island's most famous prisoner was probably Robert Stroud, the so-called Birdman of Alcatraz, who spent 54 years of his life behind bars. Stroud never had any birds at Alcatraz, nor was he the grandfatherly person portrayed by Burt Lancaster in the well-known movie. In 1909, Stroud was convicted of manslaughter. While serving his prison sentence at the U.S. Penitentiary, McNeil Island, Washington, he viciously attacked another inmate. This resulted in his transfer to USP Leavenworth, Kansas. In 1916, he murdered a Leavenworth guard, was convicted of first-degree murder, and received a death sentence. His mother pleaded for his life, and in 1920, President Woodrow Wilson commuted the death sentence to life imprisonment. It was Stroud's violent behavior that earned him time in segregation. During his 30 years at Leavenworth, he developed his interest in birds, and eventually wrote 2 books about canaries and their diseases. Initially, prison officials allowed Stroud's bird studies because it was seen as a constructive use of his time. However, contraband items were often found hidden in the bird cages, and prison officials discovered that equipment Stroud had requested for his scientific studies had actually been used to construct a still for homebrew. Stroud was transferred to Alcatraz in 1942, where he spent the next 17 years, 6 years in segregation in D Block, and 11 years in the prison hospital. In 1959, he was transferred to the Medical Center for Federal Prisoners in Springfield, Missouri, where he died on November 21, 1963. Escape attempts. 1936. Headstrong. April 27, 1936. While working his job burning trash at the incinerator, Joe Bowers began climbing up and over the chain-link fence at the island's edge. After refusing orders to climb back down, Bowers was shot by a correctional officer stationed in the West Road Guard Tower, then fell about 50 to 100 feet to the shore below. He died from his injuries. Alcatraz was not just a prison, it was a fortress designed to be inescapable. The cell blocks were cold and unwelcoming, the prison yard was a place of tension, and the dining hall was a rare moment of respite. Solitary confinement was a dreaded punishment, and escape attempts were met with severe consequences. Prisoners would use makeshift tools and plan intricate escape routes, but the searchlights and guards were always vigilant. The aftermath of any escape attempt was a thorough investigation, ensuring the fortress remained secure. Whether or not anyone succeeded in escaping from Alcatraz depends on the definition of successful escape. Is it getting out of the cell house, reaching the water, making it to land, or reaching land and not getting caught? Officially, no one ever succeeded in escaping from Alcatraz, although to this day there are 5 prisoners listed as missing and presumed drowned. One of the many myths about Alcatraz is that it was impossible to survive a swim from the island to the mainland because of sharks. In fact, there are no man-eating sharks in San Francisco Bay, only small bottom-feeding sharks. The main obstacles were the cold temperature, averaging 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit, the strong currents, and the distance to shore, at least 1 1/4 miles. Prior to the federal institution opening in 1934, a teenage girl swam to the island to prove it was possible. Fitness guru Jack LaLanne once swam to the island pulling a rowboat, and several years ago 2 10-year-old children also made the swim. If a person is well-trained and conditioned, it is possible to survive the cold waters and fast currents. However, for prisoners who had no control over their diet, no weightlifting or physical training other than sit-ups and push-ups, and no knowledge of high and low tides, the odds for success were slim. On March 21, 1963, USP Alcatraz closed after 29 years of operation. It did not close because of the disappearance of Morris and the Anglins. The decision to close the prison was made long before the 3 disappeared. Rather, it was because the institution was too expensive to continue operating. An estimated $3 to $5 million was needed just for restoration and maintenance work to keep the prison open. That figure did not include daily operating costs. Alcatraz was nearly 3 times more expensive to operate than any other federal prison. In 1959, the daily per capita cost at Alcatraz was $10.10 compared with $3 at USP Atlanta, The major expense was caused by the physical isolation of the island, the exact reason islands have been used as prisons throughout history. This isolation meant that everything, food, supplies, water, fuel, had to be brought to Alcatraz by boat. For example, the island had no source of fresh water, so nearly 1 million gallons of water had to be barged to the island each week. The federal government found that it was more cost-effective to build a new institution than to keep Alcatraz open. After the prison closed, Alcatraz was basically abandoned. Many ideas were proposed for the island, including a monument to the United Nations, a West Coast version of the Statue of Liberty, and a shopping center and hotel complex. In 1969, the island again made news when a group of Native American Indians claimed Alcatraz as Indian land with the hope of creating a Native American cultural center and education complex on the island. The Indians of all tribes used their act of civil disobedience to illustrate the troubles faced by Native Americans. Initially, public support for the Native Americans' cause was strong, and thousands of people, including the general public, school children, celebrities, hippies, Vietnam War protesters, and even Hell's Angels, came to the island over the next 18 months. Unfortunately, the small Native American leadership group could not control the situation, and much damage occurred, including graffiti, vandalism, and a fire that destroyed the lighthouse keeper's home, the warden's home, and the officers' club. In June 1971, federal marshals removed the remaining Native Americans from the island. Alcatraz Island today stands as a symbol of resilience and history, attracting countless visitors who come to explore its storied past. In 1972, Congress created the Golden Gate National Recreation Area, and Alcatraz Island was included as part of the new National Park Service unit. The island opened to the public in the fall of 1973 and has become one of the most popular Park Service sites. Today, Alcatraz Island is a vibrant part of the Golden Gate National Recreation Area. Visitors can explore its rich history, natural beauty, and diverse wildlife.